오늘은 미시건 대학 맨델슨 극장에서 이곳 경영대학원 학생들과 함께하는 CEO와의 만남을 가져보겠습니다. 지금부터 산업과 리더십에 관한 대화를 나눠보기로 하죠.
Exclusive national funding for this program is provided by A.T. Kearney, a global management consulting firm helping businesses achieve results with capabilities in strategy, operations, and technology. A.T. Kearney, right there with you.
신사 승려 여러분, 그리고 미시건 경영대학원생 여러분, CNN의 상임 정치 분석가인 제프 그린필드를 소개합니다.
Thank you. Welcome to CEO Exchange. I'm Jeff Greenfield. In this brave new economy, there are still some pretty daunting questions that face old and new enterprises. Suppose you're an established company. You do business the old-fashioned way, you manufacture products, you produce them, you sell them to customers all over the world. How do you answer critics who say that what you do, what you sell, hurts the air and the water, or even people? Those are challenges, some of them, that face Dow Chemical. Suppose you're a new breed of company. You're trying to carve out a niche on the web. You're trying to get and hold a piece of the burgeoning business-to-business e-commerce. How do you fight off the armies of competitors, all of whom see gold in them their .coms? Those are the challenges facing Chemdex, a 2.5-year-old .com that has been embraced by investors but has yet to make a profit. We will meet Chemdex's CEO in a few minutes, but first we meet Dow Chemical CEO William Stavropoulos. With its buyout of Union Carbide, Dow is now the second largest chemical company in the world. It's a company whose name still carries some echoes of distant controversies. But a more immediate question facing Dow, can a company with 19th century origins move into a 21st century world?
1897년 헨리 다우라는 젊은 화학자에게는 커다란 포부가 있었습니다. 미국 중부와 미시건 주변의 풍부한 광물을 자원으로 활용하려고 했던 거죠. 이런 생각을 토대로 산업이 탄생됩니다.
We now today have a business enterprise that's around $20 billion in sales. We have 39,000 employees. We serve customers in almost every part of the world.
다우를 21세기로 이끄는 윌리엄 스타브로폴러스는 그리스인 이민자의 후예입니다. 윌리엄은 뉴욕의 롱아일랜드에서 자랐죠. 부모님은 사탕과 아이스크림 제조 사업을 했습니다. 고등학교 때는 전설적인 칼 야틀렘스키와 야구를 했었죠. 비록 부상으로 꿈을 접어야 했지만 지금도 사무실에 가면 스포츠에 대한 사랑을 엿볼 수 있습니다.
He doesn't give you the impression of being a CEO in a one-on-one exchange because it appears that his ego is a bit submerged, certainly more submerged than a lot of CEOs that you interact with.
윌리엄은 포디엠 대학에서 약품 조제에 관한 학위를 받았고 워싱턴 대학에서 의학화학을 전공으로 박사 학위를 받았습니다. 1967년 다우에 들어와 떠나지 않았고 1995년 CEO가 됐죠.
If I had to say what's the greatest benefit that he's provided in his term as CEO, I would say set the company against a much more ambitious agenda, cause people to think outside of the box about what we could be, and then set about to prove it.
CEO로 재임하는 동안 윌리엄은 100억 달러의 가치의 자산을 매각했습니다. 그중에는 다우 소비자 상품도 포함되어 있었죠. 그리고 유니언 카바이트를 사들였습니다. 오늘날 다우의 가장 성공적인 상품은 메소첼로, 스크린의 윤활제나 갖가지 식량 묶음으로 쓰이고 있죠.
You might even think that was like strawberry pie, cherry pie.
메소첼은 다우의 사업적 접근 방식의 한 예입니다. 상품을 발명해서 그걸 많은 다양한 산업에서 사용하도록 설득합니다.
Boy, that's about the best methyl cellulose I've had today.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of Dow Chemical, Bill Stavropoulos. Welcome. Have a seat. Not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You joined Dow Chemical in 1967.
Right.
If you'd have been a Dow Chemical person on this campus here at Michigan in 1967, my guess is the reaction might have been a tad different from the applause you just got.
Right. Yeah.
The whole napalm issue was surrounding.
All right.
But as a young man in 1967, looking to use your chemistry background, did it give you any pause to think about joining a company that was that controversial?
Yeah, it did for a moment, but once you met the Dow people and you heard the story behind the whole thing, I know at that time, looking back, that the board and the top management of the company really thought they were selling a product that the government wanted them to sell, and they were doing it in the national interest. And they thought that was the patriotic thing to do. And because the war turned out to be controversial, I think it lost public support. And therefore, people who were theoretically supporting the war effort became targets. And certainly Dow was a target. But at that point in time, I think the company took the stance that this is what the government requires and this is what we're going to do.
That's an interesting point. So if it had been World War II, nobody would have said what you were making.
Exactly.
The atmosphere in which you came to Dow as a young man, just at the starting point, watching all that controversy, maybe in some sense planted an idea in your mind that, you know, this company, all companies, have to go beyond just an argument that, well, we make it, we sell it.
I believe that's so. I think in this day and age, and I think it's probably always been true, but it hasn't been articulated, but the whole idea of sustainability, the triple bottom line, that you have constituents and you must satisfy the needs of all your constituents, whether it's economic, environmental, or social, and that you can't be successful in any one of those at the expense of any other one.
This is, as we mentioned at the outset, a company that's a little more than 100 years old.
Yeah.
And in some sense, it's a traditional company. I mean, in this world, you actually make things.
Right.
Take things out of the ground, you process them, you sell. It's really, it's a kind of a new concept probably to some people who only know about that.
But we're still out there, really.
But that also implies certain, I would think, limits. That is, it's a cyclical business. It's mature in some ways. And when you came in as CEO, it seems to me that you took a risk. You were trying to say to this very traditional company, we better change at the roots.
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that a company has been very successful, and you don't become 100 years old without being successful, without changing. It was time for us to change. It was time for us to understand that the world had changed very radically, and that if we didn't change radically, we would be history also. So what we started to do is put new aspirations for the company, develop a new strategy. We changed our product mix. We changed our organization. We're changing our culture. There's not one part of the company that we didn't change.
Isn't this a little like turning around the QE2?
The most difficult thing to do is to change a successful company. If you have a burning platform there, if your back's to the wall, you can rally people very quickly. So you have to spend a lot of time articulating why you want to change, how you're going to change, and you have a promising future. And you have to paint that future. You have to paint a story where people can find themselves in that story contributing. And that's what we try to do every single day in our company.
Another part of what your strategy was to use the buzzword downsizing.
Right.
I mean, you not only eliminated a whole bunch of middle management levels, but I think it was 10,000 people.
Right. Right.
Now, Dow is in Midland, Michigan, right?
Right.
That's a pretty small community compared
really
to Chicago.
Right.
So it must have been that you were saying to people who you not only had worked with, but lived with, maybe gone to school, their kids and your kids went to school.
Right.
You're not here anymore.
That's right.
Now, you know, people like yourself are thought of as pretty tough-minded guys. Was that emotional for you?
Very emotional, because it was a time when you had to, and everybody in the company had to, look at their operation and say, what did they have to do to make this world competitive? Because if we didn't, we knew we wouldn't be around as a company. Some of the divestitures became very emotional because you became attached to the products, attached to the people, attached to your customers and what it does for the customers. But on the other hand, when the facts are laid out there and people see a better future somewhere else, there's a readily acceptance.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about a little. For one thing, the stuff when I was a kid I knew about Dow,
Right.
it still may have the name, but it's not yours anymore, right?
Right.
Oven cleaners, all that stuff, that's not yours.
Saran wrap, exactly.
But part of what it seems to me you're trying to do with Dow is to create a whole new line of products that really are environmentally friendly. I mean, I don't know if you're wearing one now, but you actually have a shirt
It's made out
that's made out of corn.
That's exactly. I should have brought one, by the way. I mean, they're terrific.
This must come in handy when you run out of
That's
food.
right. You put butter on it and you eat it.
But I mean, that's a radically
Yeah.
different notion for Dow, isn't it?
One of the things that's happened, if you look at chemistry and science, and we're a science, chemistry-based company, is that what we're trying to do is leverage that knowledge to solve mankind's problems. I would dare say that without a chemical industry, or without chemistry and science, the quality and the standard of living that we have would not be possible. So one of our obligations as a company is to articulate that and reposition our company as one that can contribute to the sustainability that I talked about earlier.
Would it be fair to say this represents, for the company and for the chemical industry in general, a fairly dramatic change in corporate culture? Because I think there was a time when it was a lot more defensive a generation or two ago.
Yeah, and I think you get defensive when you get attacked, you naturally get defensive. And I think that over the last several years, number of years, we've tried to be in the forefront of things and try to take a leadership role, not only in our industry, but in industry in general. Because active engagement with your publics is extremely important. And we do it in many ways. At every one of our plant sites, what we have is a citizens group that is an advisory group to our facilities. And that's a way to understand what the publics need and what we need so that we can work together.
It's such a cliche when the head of a major company talks about roots, but it's so often true. Tell us about the family you came from.
Well, I came from a immigrant family. My father was a candy maker and an ice cream maker. And he came to this country when he was 14 years old. Had no education, by the way. And he went to work, and he found a job, and he started a little candy kitchen out in the eastern end of Long Island, and he kind of built that up.
But something happened to the candy company that it seems had a pretty big impact not only on your family, but on your whole life.
When I was a very young man, my father lost everything, and he was about 58 years old, and suddenly he was a counterman again. And he did that for about 3 or 4 years, and he worked himself back up. And that was a turning point in our life, and it brought the family together, number one, but it also taught us a lot of lessons. It showed me that with perseverance, with confidence in yourself, and you can make it back. And as I viewed my father, he was the first turnaround artist I've ever met. And he was my first business guru, actually.
You had ambitions that are common to people like me when we're 8 or 9, but yours extended beyond that because you, unlike me, had some skill in it, namely baseball.
Right.
Did you have dreams of being a major league?
Yes, I did. I had dreams of playing baseball, and then I grew up with Carl Yastrzemski, who later turned out to be a Hall of Famer and played for the Boston Red Sox. And Carl was my neighbor and my classmate in a little school that graduated 18 of us at the time. And we both kind of shared that dream for a while, but when the curveball started getting a little tougher, I could realize I better start doing something else.
But the difference between your skills, which were greater than most, and Carl Yastrzemski's was just
that much.
That much.
But that's all you need.
The former chief executive, the late chief executive of the Coca-Cola Company, was quoted recently, I mean, a quote when he was alive, obviously.
Yeah.
What he said was that working for Coca-Cola is a calling. It's not a way to make a living, it's a religion. Is that how you look at what you do?
I think what you have to do, I look upon it, you have to do what you like. And so that you can put your blood and guts into it, and it's not work. It's something that you really, really enjoy. And when people ask me about, give me some advice on what I should do, pick something that you like, and then the rest will come your way. And that's what I look upon it. And surround yourself with people who have that same zeal for your company.
Okay. Bill, we'll be talking to you again in a few minutes. Thanks very much for joining us.
You bet.
See you in a bit. As I mentioned, we'll be speaking more with Bill later in the program. Our next guest, David Perry, already has 2 startups under his belt. His latest, Chemdex. It works kind of like a dating service. That is, it uses the web to connect buyers looking for chemicals and lab products to sellers. Though Chemdex has yet to turn a dime of profit, its business model is definitely turning heads on Wall Street.
So the IBM relationship has 4 points, actually.
30살이라는 나이로 데이비드 페리는 그리 알려져 있지는 않지만 최대 규모의 기업인 캠덱스의 CEO입니다.
You'll never see a box and you'll never see a warehouse in our business.
그 이유는 캠덱스가 기업 간 거래를 하는 전자상거래 기업으로 인터넷을 통해 생명공학 회사들과 소비자를 연결해주기 때문입니다. 사용자들은 수백만 개의 상품을 보고 온라인 상에서 주문을 합니다. 3년 후면 1조 3천억 불 규모의 인터넷 시장 중 80%는 기업 간 거래가 될 겁니다. 캠덱스도 한몫 벌게 되겠죠.
It's an environment like I've never seen before in the sense that the opportunities are absolutely endless.
비록 온라인상의 기업이지만 캠덱스는 월스트리트에서 높은 가격이 매겨집니다. 캠덱스는 1999년 7월 주당 $15에 공개되었죠. 4개월 후 10억 달러어치의 주식이 발행됐습니다.
Chemdex has very effectively positioned themselves. They have nailed their customer service offering. They've nailed the infrastructure issue.
그러나 데이비드 페리가 아직 확실히 하지 못한 것은 이윤입니다.
I am not concerned that we do not turn a profit, but I am very focused on eventually turning a profit. I view our stage of business today as investing for the future.
페리는 하버드 대학원생 때 캠덱스를 세웠습니다. 아칸소에서 화학을 전공한 후 2번째 시도였죠. 처음은 바이로젠이라는 생명공학 회사였습니다.
Chemdex, in fact, was the 4th business plan I wrote while I was in business school. The other 3 I took to the logical conclusion when I decided investing my time further in these didn't make sense.
하버드에서 페리는 교과서보다 사업에 관한 공부를 더 많이 했습니다.
I think his reputation in school was as someone who was a good student but not a fantastic student. And I think people are generally pretty impressed with what he's done coming out of school.
Right, everybody's interested in e-business. Here's a
3형제 중 장남인 데이빗은 가족 중에서 처음 대학을 졸업한 인물이었습니다. 그는 5년 동안 엑손에서 일을 했죠. 그러나 가장 힘든 건 아버지의 비료 산업을 도울 때였습니다.
I started working for him in that business when I was 6 years old for a quarter an hour. I got a quarter an hour raise every year. So by the time I was 12, I was making about $2 an hour.
데이비드 페리는 아칸소에서의 경험도 자랑스러워하지만 이제 그의 미래는 캠덱스에 있습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 30-something CEO with a $2 billion idea, David Perry of Chemdex. Welcome. It's a great audience. Have a seat. I think it's only fair that we match your story with Bill's. Like Bill, you didn't exactly come, I would not say you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Fair enough?
Would be a good word to put it, yes.
If I read your biography right, you were accepted at MIT, but couldn't go.
Well, my parents told me when I was 14 years old, I remember it very clearly, actually. They said, Dave, there's 2 things we're not going to give you. It's a car and a college education. I was really bummed about the car. But it was a fair statement, and it didn't indicate that they didn't think college was important, because education was something that they'd pushed from even before we were in school. But it was something that they felt like we needed to earn on our own, and by telling me early, that was fair. It gave me the opportunity to prepare myself to put myself through college. So I went on and did the best I could. By the time I graduated from high school, I had the opportunity to go a couple of places, but MIT was one of those places that I couldn't afford. I ended up going to the Air Force Academy for the first 2 years.
Did you have ambitions to Tom Cruise-like Top Gun status?
In fact, Top Gun came out in 1986, which was the year I graduated from high school. I'm sure there's no correlation, however, between that and my choice.
What happened?
I attended the Air Force Academy for 2 years. I learned a ton. You don't go there, you don't stay there because you like it, but it's a worthwhile experience. I was injured while I was playing football there, lost my pilot qualification, which when you're a 20-year-old male, that's a terrible thing to happen at that point in your life, and decided that I could obviously have stayed in and done some non-flying job, decided that wasn't the path I wanted to pursue, and decided to go into the private sector.
Some of us have earned money during the summer doing things like filing, waiting on tables. You had a somewhat different vocational route. What'd you do?
I worked in a salmon cannery in Alaska for 3 summers. I left the Air Force Academy, going to a private school, knew I needed to come up with some money somehow. Saw a segment, I believe it was 2020, that was talking about college kids that went to Alaska, and then I think the focus of the program was how dangerous it was, but they mentioned in there that you made a lot of money, and my ears perked up, and so I ended up calling the Chamber of Commerce in Alaska, found a job in a salmon cannery, once again in the middle of nowhere, and ended up spending 3 summers there. Worked out beautifully.
Okay, did you make a good deal of money?
The money was great.
Was it dangerous?
I didn't get hurt.
That's what lawyers call an argumentative denial. That's like when you say, do you love me, and the other person says, I always think fondly of you. It doesn't quite answer the question. It was pretty rough work, is what I'm getting.
There is danger around. There's no doubt about it.
Let's talk about Chemdex. I think if I wanted to get you angry, which given your football past I don't, but the thing that apparently you most are at pains to say what you are not is when people start bringing out the Amazon.com analogy. Oh, I get it. You're a website. I can go there and buy stuff off your website.
Good insight.
I'll sit over here while you answer the question.
In fact, we are an internet company, and when we first started, we were looking desperately for analogies, and we even called ourselves at one point the Amazon of Beakers, to my eternal shame. What we are is a B2B e-commerce company, business to business, and business to business is fundamentally different than business to consumer. We solve supply chain problems, and solving a supply chain problem can't be done by a website. It's about integrating on the customer side and the supply side. It's a very different business. The only thing that we have in common with companies like Amazon and eBay are the fact that we run on the same infrastructure, but the business models are fundamentally different.
But what strikes me as being so remarkable about this is literally a company that you could not have conceived of, I guess, what, 5 or 6 years ago? I mean, without an up and running World Wide Web and lots of people on it, I mean, it would be like trying to invent a television set before there was, what, electricity?
I think it's fair to say that the most successful internet companies all share that characteristic. We're solving problems that couldn't fundamentally be solved prior to the internet. That means that you have a relatively clear competitive landscape, right? There's nobody there.
You, like many other companies in this field, share 2 things in common. One is your stock price has gone through the roof, and second, you haven't made any money yet.
Right.
Explain to us how that works.
Okay. We're starting from no assets. You know, when I started raising money for Chemdex, it was me and a business plan. That was all of our assets. So you have to invest a significant amount of money to go do these things, or most of them you do. There are tens of millions of dollars that have to be put into building the solutions here. That's no different than building the solutions in the physical world. The thing that confuses people is the accounting is different. If you're going to build a chemical plant, that's accounted for as capital. All the things that we're spending money on to build our asset are expenses. These are things like getting customers and getting suppliers and spending marketing dollars and hiring people. So those get accounted for as expenses, but the principle is exactly the same. We're investing in an asset, and that asset is going to be applied against an opportunity that's enormous.
Eventually, you expect Chemdex to make money, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are a real business solving real business problems. The reason that people like DuPont and Dow deal with us is because we save them money or enable them to sell their products more effectively. When you do that, when you solve real business problems for real businesses, you eventually make money.
Which leads me to the next question is, why would a company want to be in partnership, or at least let you put their products online? What advantage is it to them to be part of your company, which includes their competitors in the same package?
Right. Well, as you said, we insert ourselves in the middle of customers on one side and suppliers on the other. So you're right, suppliers now are compared side by side with their competitors in many cases. This creates a more efficient market. But fundamentally, the decision to be made here is not, is this good for my company? The decision to be made is it going to happen? And if the existing company says, yes, this is going to happen, this is fundamentally going to change my market, their analysis better be to jump in as fast as possible, figure out how to take advantage of it versus their competitors.
You know, that raises a fascinating question to me, which is, in one sense, because of your company and others like it, you really have, not you personally, but this has the power to force companies to change everything from pricing to their customer relations, doesn't it? Once it's all this transparent, once a customer can know immediately, I can buy it cheaper, I can get it faster, it can be more what I want, companies may have no choice but to change not how they do business, but how they make their product and sell it. I mean, am I over the top here?
The things that companies like Chemdex are doing will fundamentally change the way the economy is run. That is a true statement.
Are there some businesses that were this kind of company, where a Chemdex, where a dating service, if you will, would not work?
You know, we've been compared to many things. A dating service is a first here.
I told you I was a liberal arts major.
My mom would be so proud. Yes is the answer. As we started Chemdex, we were obviously trying to solve a problem in one very specific industry. As we evolved and matured, we recognized that this model and these assets that we'd put together to solve one problem had broader applicability. But it doesn't work everywhere.
Is it conceivable to you that something like a Chemdex could acquire remarkable market power? In other words, I think 20 years ago, if somebody would have said Microsoft would be a monopoly or look like a monopoly, people would have laughed. Come on, it's a guy in a garage. Well, nobody's laughing. So is it possible that this kind of company, if not yours, could at some point have that kind of market power?
You know, anything's possible, I suppose. It wasn't that long ago I was trying to raise money for the first time, and I got turned down at least 40 times by people who didn't think we'd ever make any money at all. So it's hard for me to envision making that next leap to the point where we might be a monopoly at some point.
We're going to bring Bill back out in a couple minutes, but I wanted to wrap up, which is your kind of day. But in terms of the demands on your time, what's your day like? When do you get to work? Assuming you get to work and don't just sit in front of a computer at home.
This is all I do, is the answer. I wake up thinking about this. I go to sleep thinking about this. I don't spend, all of my working is not in the office, but my day roughly starts at 6 and ends between 10 and midnight. This is what I do.
So the idea of you going away, say, for 10 days to hike the streams of Bali right now is not in your cards, right?
I would rather be here for the next 10 days than hiking in Bali. That is the honest truth. That's the reason this is so much fun. There's nothing in the world I'd rather be doing. I'm 31 years old. I've gotten to start a company, grow it from 0 to 300 people, take it public, sit here on the stage with you. Where else in the world am I going to get to do that?
I think that's a good point to bring out a potential collaborator, competitor. I'm not sure what we call him in relation to you, but Bill, if you'll come back and rejoin us. Bill, welcome back. Thank you. The two of you have such almost emblematically different careers. You went to Dow Chemical in 1967.
Right.
It's now the year 2000.
Right.
You're still at Dow Chemical.
Right.
You've been in 3 companies already, and you're barely old enough to vote.
What are you guys laughing about?
But here's the point. Could you picture yourself, if you had been born a generation too earlier, succeeding up the corporate ladder? Would this have been something that David Perry could have pulled off?
When I was looking for my first round of venture capital to start Chemdex, I got turned down a lot. But I got my first term sheet, which is a venture capitalist way of saying they're interested in investing. And the partner in a venture capital firm said, I want a negative reference. Give me somebody who won't say good things about you. And it's a long list. But the person I gave them was my boss's boss at Exxon, who sure enough said, he agreed to do the reference, told the partner exactly what I thought he would say, which is, reasonably smart guy, and he works pretty hard, but he just wasn't a company guy. He never really supported his management, and all of those things that would have never allowed me to be very successful in that environment.
Now let's flip it. When you look at this young man with his own company, setting the rules barely before 30. If you were a young man starting out today, could you imagine yourself spending your entire life in one company?
I think I could. I think one of the things that bigness gives you, in a way, is also opportunities. I've had 16, 17 jobs in my career. And I think the type of company you want to join is a company that looks at talent and puts it in the right place and gives them opportunities to succeed and give them responsibility early. You know, one of the things that we want is guys like David in our company.
Well, see, that's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Given the new reality,
Absolutely.
do you have to change your definition of what a company guy is?
I think one of the things is that people want accountability and responsibility early. Between me and the newest employee is only 4 or 5 layers of management. So the span of control is wide. That means you have people who have a broad field to play on, and you give them the resources and the knowledge and let them run.
But do you also have to give them something else? Do you also have to give them the right to have quirky personalities, to maybe not dress the way we're all dressed today,
Absolutely.
to maybe not listen to the music that would be approved a generation ago by a company musicologist? In other words, do you have to let weirdness flourish,
I
even
think
at
so.
Dow?
We call it diversity, and we try to... And our definition is portable and it's broad, because we do business in 126 countries around the world.
You're a young guy starting a company. It's obviously been incredibly successful on Wall Street, but when you look at a company like Dow, 100 years old, with a market cap even larger than yours, is there something about that sheer size? Are you at all in the back of your mind tempted to say, I wonder what it's like to try to run that kind of company?
Yeah, there's actually 2 questions there. One is there anything about Dow that I envy? And the other one is there anything about Bill that I envy?
Okay.
You know, Chemdex has to justify our existence every day, right? People look at us on a minute basis to do exactly what we say we're going to do every single day, and that is the only asset base we're operating off of. And if we disappoint people, then the value of our assets goes. We lose a lot of stock price in a hurry. Right? Dow has a huge number of operating assets that are going to continue on regardless of what's happening in the world. There's a nice bit of stability there. Would I trade places? Not a chance. On the other hand, I think Bill's job is fascinating. Right? I think that the real heroes in today's economy are not the people who do what I do. They're the people who do what Bill do, who have the energy and the patience and the drive to take on a huge organization and try to turn that ship. That's a much harder thing than what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Since you have been a CEO as this 20th century ends, what do you think, whenever this happens, your successor is going to have to confront that you might not even have had to think about a few years ago?
A CEO's job is, you know, a strategy, a plan, be able to articulate that vision and develop a strategy behind it. And that's going to happen no matter what you do. And to develop a motivated workforce that is willing to do that, because there'll be a lot of flat spots in the road, and you need that motivation to get over it. But I think some of the special things that happen when you move into the 21st century is technology. And I think the technology revolution is going to happen. The 21st century is going to make the 20th century look, you know, like a slowpoke.
What about the speed with which you have to make decisions? I mean, I look at the fact that your company did not exist 2.5 years ago, pretty much, and that the instrument that made your company work didn't exist a few years before that. Do you expect, as you move down the road, that you're going to have to be the whole other old-fashioned model of making decisions, of memos and groups, and send this down and analyze it and send it out and poll it? That's deader than Marley's Ghost?
I think if we think about fundamental differences between the 2 centuries, we're talking about speed. The reason we're successful is because we're learning all the time. We've learned a ton in 2 years, and we know maybe 5% of what we're going to know 3 or 4 years from now. Right? This is really early. So what makes us successful is we're willing to make a decision based on limited amount of information, and then see if it's right or not. And if it's not right, we fix it. If it is right, we try to enhance it.
Can you, Bill, build anything like that kind of speed of decision-making, however much you might want to, into a company like Dow?
I think you can. I mean, I'm not going to be as fast as David's company, but I think this is a very good point, is that, and that's why you have to take decision-making down as far as you can in the company. Make sure the decisions are made where the knowledge is. And I think bigness there helps you, because a $50, $100 million mistake is not going to hurt a company like Dow. So you can, and if you just keep on learning from them, take that knowledge and reapply it into your company. And I think that separates some of the great companies from not so great companies, the reapplication of knowledge and the ability to take knowledge on a constant basis and apply it to your products and services and your people.
I'm going to turn to a question that one of the professors here wants to pose to you. But before I do, I'm going to ask you each for a pithy, I emphasize pithy, piece of advice to the future MBAs or taxi cab drivers or whatever, whatever fortune brings. If there are folks out there who aspire to be a 21st century CEO, give them one piece of advice, one practical piece of advice that will help them.
I'd say focus on learning. Right? Your risk profile is really low right now. Right? If you go into a company and it doesn't work, who cares? Right? You've got a lot to fall back on. The only thing you can do wrong is to get into an environment where you're not making progress really, really fast. As long as you're learning really, really fast, you're in the right place.
I think self-improvement, learning is certainly got to be on the top of your list. Another thing I put on it is do something you really like, that you enjoy, because learning will come easy. You'll enjoy it, and people around you will enjoy it. So try to find something like that. And don't be afraid to take a career risk, and I think that's what David's saying. Take those risks, especially now. I mean, take them. And I think you'll be better off for it, because you'll learn from them.
We asked some of the professors at the University of Michigan Business School for some of their questions. The first comes from Alan Afuha. He is Assistant Professor of Corporate Strategy and International Business.
In your opinion, which business model other than yours do you like the best? And what is it about it that you like?
So I think the model that I would envy the most, or the one that we aspire to, is one where you take your fundamental position in a certain product and try to expand it out into new markets and down the value chain and try to capture value through the value chain.
eBay has by far the most attractive model I've seen. You know, these are two guys who started a company selling Pez dispensers in their bedroom and grew it into a company that's now worth $20 billion. Realistically, in my opinion, worth $20 billion, because it grows organically. The more customers you have, the more valuable you are to the people selling. The more sellers you have, the more valuable you are to the people buying. The new company that comes along and tries to compete with you is always at a fundamental disadvantage because they got fewer customers and fewer suppliers.
I got to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. When you listen to a company described the way David just described eBay, they start off selling Pez dispensers in their bedrooms. Now you look back and you say, you know, I got a company, we dig, we build, we make, we ship, we go all over the world, we research hundreds of millions of dollars. These punk guys with Pez dispensers, $20 billion. Now come on, do you ever wake up and say either where did I go wrong or who the heck do they think they are?
Well, how can I get a little bit of that? All right. I think that brings up an excellent point, though, Jeff. I think that companies like ours have to learn how to do business like companies like theirs. And I think that maybe in 5 years there's going to be a convergence, collaboration between companies like David's and companies like mine.
Okay, so you don't begrudge the eBay boys their market caps at all?
I envy it, boy.
I want to switch subjects again, because business, as you mentioned a while ago, is not conducted the way it was in J.P. Morgan's time, probably not even the way it was 20 years ago. There are environmental issues, there are corporate consciousness issues. No matter how dedicated you are to balance, where you're going to say, look, we make a product, it's useful in the marketplace, it makes us money for us. It may have consequences, but we're going to keep producing it because we have to, because it's part of our business plan.
What our obligation is to make sure that we produce that product in the most efficient and effective, cost-effective way, in the best environmental way.
Does this extend to your hometown? I mean, when you're in Midland, Michigan, as we said, a small town, do you work hard in terms of checking the groundwater, in terms of the atmosphere, and making sure that what you produce in your hometown doesn't
Absolutely.
Because I understand there used to be a siren that used to go off in Midland
when they had
when emissions were too
high. And what happens is that the company a long time ago said, hey, this doesn't make sense. We've got to stop all this because waste reduction always does pay. And environmental excellence does pay. So they built it into our strategies.
Morning, Sue. Hi, Joe. How are you?
There's a question of Joseph White, who was the dean of the business school and Pierpont collegiate professor.
There's a great deal of sensitivity about chemical companies and their effects on the environment. What do you think about corporate responsibility to the environment, and what do you think about the concept of sustainable enterprise?
80 years ago, some of the people who ran the company didn't articulate it as sustainability, but they laid down management principles and a culture that was sustainable.
David, in one sense, you must think, I'm one lucky dude, because given the kind of company you run, most of these questions don't arise, right? I mean, there's no externality in terms of what you make in that sense. But are there questions that you think as you go down the road will come to be in the forefront of your consciousness? That is, what kind of products am I going to sell? Am I going to permit to be sold in this exchange? Or is that not, do you think, part of your concern at all?
In Chemdex's business, there are a lot of that stuff we don't have to worry about. But I think fundamentally, you only build a great company if the people working inside of your company believe that you're doing the right thing by all of your constituents. One of the nice things about Chemdex is, you know, our customers are pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies, people who are doing research that makes the world a better place.
One of the things these companies do is a lot of research into genetic engineering, which is really one of the more controversial issues on the whole table now. I mean, whether as a business person or even as a citizen, is this giving you any kind of concern about where this world is going? The world, that is to say, of chemistry and life sciences?
Well, it's something I think about, yes. And as a scientist, I come with a certain bias to this. When biotech first emerged 20 years ago, there was an enormous concern about what kind of products would be produced and what that might do to society. In fact, biotech has been one of the fantastic industries produced by technology, and a lot of suffering has been alleviated by it. As we look at things like bioengineered foods, now we're seeing the same sort of backlash against that as people apply those same technologies to solving problems in that area. I think as we educate people and people begin to understand that this isn't something to be feared, that the upside is enormous.
Is this kind of concern about biofood and genetic engineering, is this something where your adversaries in this area are off the rails?
No, I don't think so. I think David talked about the tremendous upside. I think we're engaged mostly in industrial biotechnology, some in the plant science. But I think what we have to do with this new science, it's in its infancy. If biotechnology someday is going to be as big as this auditorium, I think we're probably at the cup level. And what we have to do is engage, again, our publics, that we need labeling. People have to understand what it does. You need testing. And I think once people see the benefits, see the downsides and the upsides, and you've got proper labeling, I think these things will slowly work into our societies because it has enormous promise in feeding the world, new renewable products, a less environmental footprint. I mean, it has tremendous potential.
Okay, we have one more question from a member of the faculty, and it's about leadership. It comes from the man, in fact, who coined the phrase core competency. It is a fellow you know well, C.K. Prahalad. He is the Fruhoff Professor of Business Administration and Professor of Corporate Strategy.
Bill and David, you present very interesting contrast. Big traditional industry, new aggregator on the internet. Both these models are evolving and changing. What do you think are going to be the basic leadership issues as we look to the next 10 years?
You want to take that one first?
I like David's answer to that question earlier, but I think the basic issues in the next 10 years are going to be the environmental issue and the place where industry can play, the transfer of technology, and how do you transfer technology around the world so that you can raise the living standards. Third point is the ability to make fast decisions in a world where information is instant, where capital flows, where technology flows, and the only differentiator really is your ideas and your ability to implement those ideas.
Maybe it's the bias of sitting where I sit, but I think Technology is the driver here for most of this. I think about the biggest challenge is understanding technology, where it's going, but most importantly, the effects it's going to have on every aspect of our business.
Okay, in a moment we are going to turn to the questions from the students at the University of Michigan Business School. These, might be interesting and even, a lot tougher than mine. We will find out. But first, we wanted to give you a little background on the University of Michigan.
미시건 대학은 1988년 이래 꾸준히 상위 10위권 경영대학원으로 뽑히는 5군데의 학교 중 하나입니다. 경영대학원은 하나의 작은 공동체로 앤아버 캠퍼스의 구석에 자리 잡고 있죠. 1999년 미시건 경영대학원은 75회를 맞이했습니다.
We're back now, and it's time to hear from some future MBAs gathered at the Mendelssohn Theater on the university's campus.
Hi, my name is Jeff Merkowitz. This is a question for Mr. Stavropoulos. I'd like to go back to the triple bottom line for a second, and I was wondering two parts of the question. If Dow had been thinking about the triple bottom line in the 60s, would they still have produced napalm? And secondly, do you have any examples today where Dow had a product that they thought they could make a profit on, but it did not meet the other criteria?
Several years back, we are in our laboratories had developed a terrific new plastic that had great applications in the automotive industry, and it was a high heat product that you could take through the paint ovens, and that's kind of the nirvana for an engineering thermoplastic. But during further testing, we found out that in the process of making the product, there was some toxics that were produced that we could not get around. So that project was scrapped, absolutely scrapped at that time. Big disappointment to the people who were working on it because they made a breakthrough, but it was the right thing to do in the long run. Making conjectures back from 32 years ago on the triple bottom line, I think what we would probably have done is engage more of our constituents so that the decision that we would be making at the time would be one that all of our constituents would be comfortable with.
My name is John Cunningham, and my question is for either of our guests. On the subject of technology and environmental technology, Dow has been a leader in the field of environmental management, and Chemdex is a new leader in the internet economy. How do either or both of you see the role of the web as a way to both improve environmental management and also improve information flow to the stakeholders about the chemical industry?
Good. Go ahead, you start and I'll...
Since you took the other one first, all right. Well, the beauty of the internet is that fundamentally it improves communication, right? It's a new distribution mechanism. One of the problems that the environmental movement has had is that you've got this disparate set of people who have a hard time marshaling their resources together. If you think about how the internet can solve that problem, it's pretty powerful, right? You can suddenly take all those resources and put them in one place, apply them to the same problem. Now, as to specifics, I think what we're going to see is, as that happens, companies that are the target of environmental activism are going to suddenly see that there is more than a grassroots effort in their hometown. It's a grassroots effort that's global.
In this field, doesn't it put a lot more power in the hands of your potential critics, and thus make you even respond more quickly and more thoroughly?
Absolutely. You can create a world movement through the internet, and it has been done. And I think one of the powers of the internet in terms of environmental is that you can be able to track what's happening in your community and communities around the world because the information is out on the net.
I'd agree with that. But, this is not one way, right? So much of the environmental problems or the perceived environmental problems are really ones of communication. The internet solves that problem for us pretty well.
Your name and your question.
Hello, I'm Roger Shugart. My questions are two questions on the competition for Mr. Perry. First, what is it that you feel Chemdex has done in the past 2 years to, in fact, beat the competition? The second part is, what is it that you feel Chemdex needs to do in the future that'll keep people such as my colleagues here at the university from being your main competition in 2 years from now?
A question and a threat. Nice compliment. Very well packaged. So we live in a phenomenal world where the opportunity is enormous, where competition is not entrenched, where capital is accessible, and the technology is clearly understood. This is all about execution. Right? It means that anybody can do it. It's all about execution, and execution comes down to people. What Chemdex has done well, and the reason I get to keep my job, is that we've put together really a fantastic group of people that go forward and do what we do. Whether it's our investors, our board members, our executive team, all the way down to every single person that works here.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Laura Cook, and this question is directed towards Mr. Stavropoulos. You mentioned that one of the things Dow Chemical was doing to accelerate change was to push decision-making down in the organization. What other specific steps is Dow doing to innovate in this new economy?
Well, I believe very strongly that information should flow as soon as it is learned in our company so that everybody can make those decisions. So that's one thing we're doing. The other is that we have placed our businesses around the world. And then in the area of recruiting, it used to be that we hired everybody off the campus, right out of undergraduate college or at a PhD level. And now we're looking at more MBAs and we're looking at more mid-career hires so that we can accelerate the change in our company.
Please. My name is Robert Rich. I have a question for Mr. Stavropoulos. If it's possible that Chemdex could become a company that could actually create market power and put the screws to suppliers like yourself, why not take a $50 to $100 million risk of hiring a bunch of internet guys and doing it yourself and knocking him out before he gets too big?
He's got a resume for it.
Yes, Bill.
Yes. I think it's a heck of an idea. Right? I'll see you later. Right? In fact, we are embracing the Met, and we have a group of people in Dow who know Dow very well. And we bring them out to Silicon Valley, and they spend 4 or 5 days out there brainstorming ideas on how to leverage our technology in new and different ways, and come back to Dow and then develop those ideas.
Dave, would you like to comment on that suggestion?
Yeah. Fundamentally, we now have internet companies and other companies. But 5 years from now, the idea of an internet company will be silly, right? The existing players in these markets have sort of two things that make it difficult to go in and create and do what we do. One is structural, and one is more capabilities oriented. The capabilities piece is pretty clear. So if you're an existing distributor, you might be very threatened by Chemdex, but you probably don't have the resources in place, the set of expertise and the skills to do this. So there's a capabilities problem. But even if you can get the money and the capabilities, you've got a structural problem, and that's that existing players have a really hard time creating a neutral marketplace. It almost always takes somebody from the outside to do that.
My name is Sachin Gadvi, and the question is directed towards both of you. As CEO of your company, what keeps you up at night?
Execution. It's all about execution. Everything that I worry about is those 100 decisions a day that you have to do right.
Bill?
I think the thing is that keeps me awake is that are we moving fast enough? You know, strategies point the way, but people make the difference. And that's what you really worry about in the final analysis, because that's the only lasting competitive advantage you have is your workers, your people.
If you think of the question that a lot of chief executives, public and private, do, which is a legacy, Bill?
My legacy? Yeah. Oh, I think what I hope to leave my company when I retire is that they look back and said he articulated a vision, he put new aspirations in place, and then he developed a strategy and he communicated it well and set the company on a path that would take it into the 21st century and be very successful.
David, I realize you're, at 31, it may be a tad early to start thinking this way, but do you already look at Chemdex and say, I think there's something here that is going to last?
I don't think about it in those terms, but what I think about doing is creating a long-lasting, important company by solving real problems in the marketplace and getting rewarded for doing that. If in the process we create a model that fundamentally changes the way business is done, that's nice, but it's not what we set out to do.
Okay, we've come to the end of the program. I'd like to thank our guests, Bill Stavropoulos of Dow Chemical, David Perry of Chemdex, for sharing their time and their ideas and their candor. Thank you very much. I want to thank our audience as well for your questions, for your enthusiasm. The whole goal in bringing remarkable CEOs like Bill and David together in each of these programs in our series is to add to the world's marketplace of ideas. If the business of America is business, That's the business of CEO Exchange. I'm Jeff Greenfield. Thank you very much. Take care.
How did you do it? It was a great show. You got a lot of good questions.
Yeah, it really was.
Well, I hope so. Well, you go and you...
Nobody understood that. I would agree that that is the single biggest issue facing any of these companies. Nobody understood that. Yeah.
Did you play minor league?
I played semi-pro with him.
Okay.
In high school.
So internet taxation has almost nothing to do with the business-to-business side, because those are already happening.
I now actually understand, just from the basis of these two shows, so much more about this world that I'm dating.
And there is, I've been in companies where you couldn't do that, and the difference in service is completely different.
And it's good to expose yourself to, new things, what's happening, and that was the
You cannot do business anymore with this tool.